Great.
to Women in Law, Discovering the True Meaning of Success. My name's Eve Wagner. I'm a mediator at Signature Resolution and also the chair of the Committee on Empowering Women. So before we begin, we have a few housekeeping announcements. You'll receive your MCLE certificate shortly after the program. Your certificate will also be stored, which is really convenient, on the BHBA Plus website, which is a member-only community. It's fantastic because they keep track of all of your programs, so you can just click on it and print it out. Also, don't forget to complete the survey at the end of the program. So I just wanted to let you know this program is being co-sponsored by the Committee on Empowering Women, the Committee on Inclusion, and the Committee on Work-Life Balance. Since I'm the chair of the Committee on Empowering Women, real quick, I just wanted to give a shout out for if you are looking for MCLE. I just noticed on demand, we have a program, our last program on pregnancy discrimination will meet the new requirements of the California Bar for your MCLE on elimination of bias. So feel free to check that out. Now on to the program. So Women in Law, Discovering the True Meaning of Success was published March 2022, redefines the way we look at career and life success as female lawyers. To lead today's discussion with its authors, Tasha Gordon-Troy joins us. She is the founder of Ramsey's House Publishing and an attorney and publisher with more than 20 years of progressive experience in acquisitions and development of legal references, serving attorneys in various fields of law. Tasha is also an experienced editor who is passionate about good writing and making people sound better than they ever thought they could. So, Tasha, thank you for joining us today, and over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Eve. I appreciate it. And just to make sure that we stay within our time, we're not even going to waste a whole lot of time on introductions, but I have 5 of the most incredible co-authors of mine to tap into to discuss what success means for them and much more than that. And as we work our way through this hour. So please remember to ask questions in the Q&A. Definitely connect with all of us on LinkedIn. We are certainly open to do that. And if you haven't already bought the book, remember the name of the webinar is the name of the book. So you can't miss it. We've got 23 chapters in this bad boy that are a must read. You can find it on Amazon. See, everybody's proud of it. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo. And if you Google it, you will probably find it in so many other places as well. So without further ado, we are going to kick this off. We've got a really good mix today. So I'm going to run this through really quickly. We've got Angela Hahn, in-house counsel, life coach, and podcast host. We have Jen Deal, who is former Big Law partner and life coach. We have Jamie Szal, tax law partner. We have Lauren Tettenbaum, entrepreneur and women's advocate. And we have Jennifer Belmont Jennings, senior wealth advisor. And of course, we have me, our friendly neighborhood editor, writer, and publisher. So to kick this thing off, we are going to get into a remarkable discussion because we are women who have taken remarkable paths to get to where we are and to define success for ourselves. And seriously, every day I pinch myself because this book, again, and I'm going to show it again, this book has actually allowed me to get to know some of the greatest women, probably that I would never have been able to meet in any situation because of this book. And because I'm the editor and publisher, I'm very familiar and very intimate with all of their stories because I've read this several times in the process of publishing it. So I'm going to start with Angela Hahn because Angela Hahn, you mentioned to me that you wanted to publish a book. And I reached out to you and I said, you know what, my services are at your disposal, but mainly I wanted to make sure that the book was done right. So, because, you know, people throw things together over the weekend and it's not pretty. So I wanted to make sure that we have pride in what we do. And as you can see, everyone has the book and we certainly are proud of it. And it also is for a noble cause. The money is being donated to Ms. JD, which is a nonprofit that helps female lawyers as well as law students. So keep that in mind and please go out and buy your copy of the book. Okay, after some soul searching and after having told another co-author that her story was just as important as anybody else's, because I was sort of on the fence as to whether I was actually going to be in the book, I had to think about that and wonder why I was questioning my own story. But I came to the conclusion that it's my story. I lived it. I wrote it to a certain extent, and I can probably help someone else along the way. So here I am, and here we are. So as facilitator of this project, Angela, you are the one who proposed it. You are the one who spearheaded it. Would you mind sharing with the audience why you thought this book was the way to go?
Yes. Well, thank you for such an amazing introduction for the book, all of us, everything. You give us a lot of credit, and I also want to give you just the biggest credit because it would not have been possible at all without you. And I remember us having that first conversation. It was last year, over a year ago, actually, I think around July. There was an article about how women are not paying enough attention to upward mobility, as if that is the only thing that we need to pay attention to. Well, there are a lot of different reasons that we were upset about that article, but I think the biggest, the thing that kind of stirred up something in me was that we were like, our own definition of success was being taken away, and it felt like we needed to reclaim that word for ourselves. And I think even outside of that article, we were kind of in a place where it was like in the middle of the pandemic. We were still processing the pandemic and the tragedy, and we were kind of in a place where we wanted to create something on our own. And a lot of us were in a bit of a transition, trying to really understand and curate what really meant like success for us. And so I put a call to action to any person who would be interested in sharing their story on how they came to their own definition of success. And the thing I'm most proud of, and I say this all the time, is that I didn't put out any application process. It was really just any person who identified as a woman that wanted to share how they arrived where they arrived at. And so there was no screening for like, oh, you must have had like 3 years of experience, or you must have been in an in-house counsel or a big law or whatever. Because I truly believed that whether you're fresh out of law school or whether you're 50 years out of law school, you have a very important story to share that all contributes to the dialogue of how we create our own definition of success. And so when I made that call to action, I think I got like over 50 interested responses, and the final 23 of us remained until the very end, until this past March when we finally published. And I was so beyond grateful that Tasha and I actually had a conversation. She illuminated to me just how difficult it can be to, number one, publish a book, and number two, to do it with 22 other women. And so she helped me coordinate the entire process. I was really just kind of facilitating just the sort of the mental fortitude in helping us get through it all. And that's kind of like the short of our journey.
And that's definitely how it came together as well. And so I'm glad, Angela, that you were able to expound for the audience exactly how we came together for this. And this sort of leads me to Jen, because just recently, Jen, you've been practicing law for quite some time, and you've been a partner in big law for a while. But recently, you moved to a smaller firm to free up to focus on something that you feel passionate about. And when you told me that, I immediately thought that this should be something that we should be talking about, because again, we've always talked about success. The definition of success constantly changes in all of our lives as our priorities change. And so with such a prestigious career in law, you've decided that you need more time to do something else. And so I really wanted you to get into some of the details of that decision that you made, because it's not an easy decision to make.
Yeah, it's really interesting when I think back on it, because when we were finishing this book up last year, that version of me would never have predicted where I am right now. So I was getting to a place where I had shifted my practice around, and I'd done a lot of things to really make being a big law partner feel sustainable in a way that it never had before, in a way that I thought that I could do it for forever. And the fun thing about that, though, is when you have that breathing room and the mental space to really think, and to the skills, I guess, to make your career feel a way that feels sustainable, opportunities just seemed to open up. So I started a coaching business during the pandemic. I was doing that on the side while doing my big law job. And in earlier, this year, I got the opportunity to go to a smaller firm and do only the parts of the job that I love on a much smaller scale. And honestly, the decision was really easy for me because I knew I had learned the skills at that point to make anything work for me. And so the decision piece was easy. Telling people was less easy because I absolutely loved where I was. I couldn't imagine having practiced big law anywhere else. It was a great group, but the opportunity came up and I felt like I was in a spot to take it so that I could still do the parts of lawyering that I love and also coach on the side. And at that point, it really didn't feel like a big decision to me anymore. If you had asked me a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, it would have felt like a huge decision. But I had gotten to a place where I just trust myself to make things work for me and know that no matter what I'm doing, as is the point of the book, that we get to define success for ourselves, and that's not going to look the same. The choice I made 5 years ago is not going to look the same forever, and that I'm allowed to change that definition anytime that I want.
And that is so true, because the word that you used was trust. You had to trust yourself, because a lot of times we are fearful of the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen when we make a decision that goes against what other people might be thinking that we should be doing. And so this sort of leads me to Lauren too, because Lauren, as part of your chapter, you talked about how you started law. I want to forgive me if I get the dates wrong or years wrong, but I think you said you started law in 2010 and you left law in 2021. And you've gone on to do something that you're so much more passionate about. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. You were close. I completed my JD MSW, both of them, my Master's of Social Work and my law degree, in 2011. And then I deactivated all 3 states in which I was licensed to practice law in 2021. And now I am practicing full-time as a social worker, which is a license that I had held all these years, but I thought that the way I wanted to make an impact in my career was as a lawyer. And I did that for a while. And I worked in big law, and I worked in boutique law firms, and I worked as a law firm professional supporting other parent lawyers and other colleagues. But with the pandemic, I decided to focus full time on supporting other working moms and focusing on mental health. And I was struck by a theme that we all, I think, discuss in the book, which is what we had said earlier, which is trusting yourself. Because the definition of success can and will change, but at the end of the day, you are your own best advocate. And that's also something that I actually learned in social work school, not to knock law school, because of course we are all lawyers here too. But I carry that value with me in everything I do. And I encourage everyone here to remember that you should advocate for yourself, trust yourself, and follow what makes you happy.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, in your chapter too, you also talk about boundary setting. And that's something that probably impacts us all, especially women, more so career women, trying to figure out, how do we set boundaries at work? How do we set boundaries at home? All of that sort of thing comes together. And I just wanted to read something really quickly from your chapter. Okay. There were times when I refused to come into the office on a Sunday with a 4-month-old at home after a week of working until midnight. There were times when I chose to leave the office at certain hours to not only relieve my childcare, but also to simply be with my family. There were times when I chose boundaries and personal happiness. I do not regret those decisions. There were times when I was told by other women lawyers to be quieter, to literally talk less because I didn't have the appropriate pedigree, to refrain from asking for what I deserved because the policies were meant to be accepted as status quo. That is really powerful. And I want to ask the question, if we have time to go around, but specifically to you, where do you think we are in this profession right now? When we're talking about, we're obviously used to men trying to put us in a box, but then we also have other women lawyers who are under the impression that we still need to be in that box. Are we still there? Or are we at least hoping to build ourselves out and sort of change the mindset overall?
I am an optimistic, positive person. I believe the best in people. I have had experiences, like I said in the book, by other women lawyers where I was put down and I was told not to advocate for changes in parental leave policies. I didn't listen to them, and I did successfully change the parental leave policy at 2 very big law firms. And I have to say that even though that wasn't my practice as a lawyer, that's one of the advocacy pieces that I'm most proud of in my career. But in general, to answer your question, I'm a firm believer in women supporting women. And while I have had a few negative experiences here and there, I think overall that there are so many opportunities for us to support each other. Look at us here today. It has been a genuine pleasure personally and professionally to get to know all of my co-authors and to continue to have opportunities to show younger generations of lawyers, as well as lawyers of all ages and all stages in their careers, that when we come together, we are incredibly powerful.
Yes, we are. And just having you mentioned changing certain policies at work, which sort of segues me into Jamie, because Jamie, you mentioned in your chapter something that so many of us women as mothers are struggling with, even whether it was back then or today or whenever. It's really about making daily life work when it comes to career and family and when they collide. There's a passage in your story that discusses your first trip to the Supreme Court to watch an appeals argument. So I'd like for you to get into a little bit of detail about what happened that day.
Sure. You know, this was, it was the first Supreme Court case that I had worked on. I was there to listen to the arguments for, with my co-counsels and on behalf of our client. And, you know, leading up to that argument, I remember thinking to myself, like, should I go? Should I not go? I was not making the argument, so I was not going to be seated at counsel table there. I was the junior person on the team. And with the Supreme Court, that means I wasn't even guaranteed a seat in the room anymore because of how limited they were. But I remember thinking to myself, you know, my daughter was 4 months at the time that I was going through this thought process, saying, you know, I don't want to regret having not been there, because I was concerned about her missing me. And it occurred to me that if I want to really see a world in which she did not have to deal with barriers or self-imposed barriers, societally imposed barriers, that I needed to start living out the values that I wanted her to live within. And so I went to the arguments. I flew down that morning. I was still pumping at the time. So I stood in line for a counsel admitted to the bar, and the Supreme Court at the time did not have a pumping room for mothers. And if you left the line, you booted to the back of the line. And there was no way I was going to get out of my place in line, having hauled down from Maine on a really, really early flight to get there in time. And so thank goodness for hands-free pumping and pump kits and stuff. I was wearing a poncho. Pro tip to any moms out there, get yourself a poncho or a cape of some kind. Thank goodness they're back in fashion these days. And so I hooked up and I stood in line and I pumped in line waiting for the arguments to get my seat. And goodness, I felt like a freaking badass doing that. It was most time I was just like, I am here as a lawyer for my client on a really important case, doing really important work, and I'm being a mom at the same time, and like no guilt, no shame, no holds about it. It was one of those, like, if you need to give me a hug, we're kind of doing it from back here because there was a lot of stuff hooked up front. And after the argument was over and the case was over, I went back, and at that point in time, it had been several hours, so I needed to pump again, and I didn't have a line to wait in at that point in time, so I hunted around in the bottom of the court to see if I could find a more private spot to pump. The court has 2 screening rooms in the bottom that show kind of a reel of the history of the court. And so one of those rooms happened to be empty, and I went and I sat in there and pumped again, and just had the ability to go back and think of, here I am, like I said, on a really an opportunity that I think a lot of litigators dream about having, you know, working on a Supreme Court case and being at the court and advocating for your client. And part of me thought, like, you know, maybe Justice Ginsburg, she was alive at the time, would have been a little tickled pink to think of me dressed in pink with my breast pump there. But also it underscored for me one thing, a couple of things that I talk about in my chapter, again, to reiterate that point that I felt it incumbent on me to live out the values that I wanted for my daughter to see. Part of that is advocating for myself. So since that experience, I have gone on to advocate in my own firm and with the ABA generally, and with other bar associations for pumping accommodations for test takers and CLE takers, because there should not be a bar to entering the bar just by needing to go through a process that is natural and takes time and needs sanitary private places to make that happen. I recognize not everybody is going to be comfortable sitting there in their test room with their breast pump on, pumping away. And also, you know, to the point I think Lauren raised this, that I found incredible empowerment being in a community of other women, other moms who are lawyers, who had gone through those experiences. I found it very empowering to hear from them what worked, what didn't, what they were proud of advocating for. And that in many ways gave me the confidence and courage to be a much more vocal advocate for myself and for other women and for other mothers, because like Lauren, I firmly believe in women supporting women. I don't compete against women because there's plenty of work to go around for all of us. I compete for other women, and that's a value that I very fundamentally hold dear because I truly believe that when we come together as a community, we empower one another, we make the industry and a practice better for ourselves for generations to come. So that's my story there. All goes back to the Supreme Court and a little Ruth Baby Ginsburg breast pump.
That is such a unique story, and I just had to highlight that one because I have no idea what I would have done. I probably wouldn't have gone. I have no idea. But yeah, that is truly being a badass. You're standing in line, pumping, nobody notices, you got it all covered. That's you know, you can't do anything better than that. But that leads me though to a question for Jennifer, because I think based on your story, Jennifer, you seem to be like the classic example of what I consider to be course correcting. And I remember when I graduated from law school, there weren't a whole lot of jobs available. I think the economy was kind of slipping at the time, but your story really hammers that point in terms of what was out there, what was available to you, and then how you had to deal with the constant, I don't know what to call it, that negative sound that we hear when we always hear rejection or we always hear no. Can you sort of expound on that for everybody? Because it's so important to focus on your mindset and figure out, like, what can you do that's positive as opposed to drowning yourself in the negative?
Yeah. So anyone who graduated in the financial crisis can probably sympathize. You're like borrow all this money thinking, oh, even if I make the minimum amount, like I can pay this off. Um, and yeah, it was hard and it was not, nothing really went the way that I thought it would. And I really realize now, like, what a story that is that needs to be told, because especially in this world of social media, like we are always like, oh, look how perfect things are. And even my own posts today and like on LinkedIn, I think a lot of people wouldn't think that I beat myself up or felt as bad about myself as I have at various times. So I try to like share that because I don't want people to feel alone. But I did have to do some course correction. I was doing estate planning and family law, and I really liked estate planning and probate, stuff like that. And I actually didn't totally hate family law. There were aspects of it that I liked. I had a philosophy that you had to love your kids more than you hated your spouse. And I could control that with my clients, but I couldn't control it with other people and like the other lawyers, and I couldn't control the judges. And there was just like, it was just really hard, the whole like justice thing. It's not just or fair. And it's great. You can bill your client all you want to, but they actually have to write a check to pay you. So, when people like act like lawyers all have money, I'm like, yes, I billed $10,000, but today the amount that I actually got, I barely could fill up my tank with gas, like, because nobody paid their bill. So I, having a newborn at the time, like a 9-month-old, I was very stressed. I would have so much anxiety before I go to court, even though I could do court, right? Like I could show up, like they wouldn't know that I was so stressed about it. And my husband was just like, you're going to die. And I'm going to be a single dad with this kid. And you're like, your friends that are this stressed out and miserable, at least they're getting paid. Like, like they can go on vacation sometimes. And so he had really encouraged me to like think about what I wanted to do and like not just do what I felt like I had to, because I was so afraid that people would view me as a failure. I had spent all this time and money going to law school, and you're a lawyer, and it's like you've earned this right to be able to be like, I'm a lawyer. And then to all of a sudden have to do something different, there is an aspect of feeling like a bit humiliated that you have to go through this process, right? And my first day when I switched jobs, I got into this industry. I'm an advisor now, but somebody had brought it up to me. Like I was looking to go maybe in-house or corporate or compliance. And they said, hey, with your background, you'd actually make a great advisor, because we have people who get divorced. We have the estate planning stuff and all the money, like it all. And I was like, oh, I'll try it. Like, it's literally and my first day, I remember like binding a portfolio review or something. And I kind of wanted to cry. I was like, I used to have somebody who would like bind this for me. And now I'm the one who has to do it. And there's nothing wrong with it. It was just like this, I went from having my own office to being in a cubicle. And it was very hard because I took a little time to like get into the advisor role. Like I had to take tests and all this stuff. And then when it became clear that where I wasn't going to work out, it just needed new growth opportunities. I wasn't going to be the right long-term fit. I experienced a lot of rejection. I was interviewing with law firms again, and some of them couldn't afford to pay me what I wanted. And I wasn't sure I wanted to go into the big law route when I was pushing 40. I didn't know I wanted to like start the clock at that age. It was like, what's my life going to be like? And I was frustrated, but a lot of times something wouldn't work out and somebody would introduce me to somebody else. They'd be like, we just can't make this work, but you need to talk to this firm, And so all these no's like actually got me to where I wanted to be ultimately. And I think what was hard was, I felt bad about myself. I just didn't I mentioned in the book, I was like always praying like, why do you hate me, God? Just like feeling sorry for myself. He didn't hate me, but you just get in that victim mentality. It's very easy to do. And when I finally got to this point where I was like, I am doing everything that I possibly can. And this is life advice, no matter whether you're looking for a new job or you want a promotion, right? Like I want to be a partner. Like that's no secret. Like I got to do everything I can. I am doing every single thing that I know to do. The only thing I can change right now is my attitude. And if I'm going to be negative, Debbie Downer, like whatever you want to call it, like other people are going to feel that, and they do. They don't want to be around you when you're negative. And they also don't want to be around you if you're too Pollyanna either. So like, you got to find like a nice balance there. But that for me was a huge thing because that was the only thing I could control. That was it. And so I showed up to work. I learned as much as I could. I took care of my clients the best that I could, you know, making sure that even though I knew I was leaving, that they would be in good hands and things would be done. I wasn't going to just like walk out. Even the corporate counsel at my new place, they'd like asked a question about me accessing a file before I had left. I was like, well, I was organizing it. And they're like, oh, aren't you cute? I was like, well, I left a nice list of like all the things that were out, you know, because I didn't want anybody to fall through the cracks. And so that was huge for me. And I've also learned to just like add on to that, because it's been several years from that, to start looking at the challenges more as a refinement period, as opposed to like feeling like you're being punished or something that's bad. Yes, sometimes you could be going through a bad experience where it's like you need to get out, right? And you've got to be in touch with yourself and enough to know when that's the case. But sometimes it's like, okay, if you want to be a leader, you have to have experience to be a leader. People are going to respect you more if you know how things feel, or if you've been there and you've done that. And so anytime something is frustrating to me, I try to stop and say, okay, like this is a refining process. And it's to help make me better at what I do. And now I get the luxury of hindsight. I can look back and see how all the estate planning stuff and the family law stuff, I use it all the time in my day job. I just say like, we're going to confirm this with your attorney. We're going to confirm this with your attorney or your CPA. You know, I don't have to like bill my time. And, you know, I feel like my clients are getting more because like I've been on both sides. So, but the mind shift was huge. You just have to get yourself out of the negative stuff. It's destructive.
It is very destructive, and it can eat away at you in so many different ways that you may not even be realizing. And that sort of segues me into a question that I have for Angela, because Angela, your story is heart-wrenching in some ways, because you know, you put a lot of expectations on yourself as a young, and I think you're probably one of the younger attorneys on this call in terms of how long you've been in practice, but you placed a lot of expectations on yourself. You developed some health issues out of it, different things like that. And I know there are a lot of women out here who are probably in your shoes, who have been maybe practicing for less than 5 years, and they're trying to figure out, well, where's the happiness? You know, where's the satisfaction in the career? It's something that I'd like you to sort of speak a little bit to, in terms of how you reached the decisions that you made to help you gain the clarity and the purpose in your life.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I was bulimic for 7 years, since I came to the States after high school for college in the US. And it was for a variety of reasons, but primarily it was because of the culture shock and the bulimia, the food, and the mismanagement of it was where I found comfort, because it was immediately something that my body could feel. And it was kind of a way to numb the sort of deeper pain that I felt leaving home on my own. And so I think it was actually in the middle of law school that I was able to overcome this through a community of support. I was just married at that point. And so I was more surrounded by a community of support. And I can't emphasize just how important that could be, especially when you are even joining a community, whether it's family or friends or colleagues or a professional network. When you have been on your own for so long, that is also kind of a cage. Like, oh, I need to be self-sufficient. I need to be strong. I need to do all the things myself. That is also a cage that I have set up for myself. And so I kind of like stopped myself from actually asking for the support that I needed. And so going from that place to another point of like becoming more comfortable with support, becoming more comfortable with trusting myself when I ask for that support, becoming more comfortable with trust itself, as Lauren was saying, it takes practice. And I think so many times, lawyers, like we kind of grapple with that idea of trust. It's like, well, I can't really like have the space or the time to trust myself when I have deadlines to consider, when I have clients that are on the line and all of those things. But and then so we start judging ourselves when we feel like we cannot trust ourselves. But I think that we are given a lot of opportunities to exercise that trust, like whether it could be with our family, for example, like, is it really okay that I'm giving them extra screen time today for our kids? Is it really okay that I am going to shut my phone down just for the day? And so kind of like finagling, like playing with that idea of self-trust and applying that in kind of outside of professional spaces, we get to kind of build that block by block and being able to exercise that and being able to become more comfortable as long as we know the direction that we're going, which is to understand that we actually have a greater capacity than we think to be able to ask for help, support, and trust.
Mm-hmm. And I have to say amen to that, because I think we are a group of type A personalities. We're not used to asking for help. We're always the ones who other people ask our help. And so we're always piling things on top of ourselves and increasing our expectations and so forth. And before you know, we're the ones drowning and everybody else is doing fine. So that's a major issue, especially among those women who are career-minded and also are trying to have a family at the same time. And so that sort of leads me to something, Jen, that you said on another webinar that really touches on this whole work-life balance thing too. Because for me, the term work-life balance is misleading at best and meaningless at worst. Because balance refers to something that, you're giving the same weight to both sides of the scale. That's absolutely impossible at any given time. So, but yet we're killing ourselves to attempt to accomplish that balance that doesn't even exist. So you said something on another webinar that had to do with making conscious decisions. So I'd like you to speak to that.
I wish I remember what I said. But so work-life balance to me is one of those phrases that I think is almost always used to women's detriment. It's this idea that if you are just perfect enough at home, if you are perfect enough at work, somehow you're going to reach this magical balance and everything's going to feel good all the time. And it's not possible, one. And two, if you're thinking about your life, work is part of your life. And so when you separate them out, we tend to, not put as much intentionality into each piece of it when we don't think of them as one piece of the whole, and does the whole feel good? And so I think balance really looks different for everyone. I don't think it's the same at any given time. And in order to, I also think that no matter how balanced you get, even if you get the perfect amount of hours at home, the perfect amount of hours at work, right, we're still all going to have the human experience. You're going to experience negative emotion. It's not going to magically change everything for you. And so to me, really checking in with yourself, and instead of trying to reach this amorphous balance, just like constantly checking in with yourself, is what I am doing right now, does this feel good? Does this feel right? Is this moving me in the direction that I want to go? And not with the goal of some ultimate perfect life, perfect work-life balance, but just moving towards whatever your goals are. Am I feeling good along the way? Because if it feels terrible along the way to get to whatever that work-life balance is, or whatever you think your perfect balance is, it's going to feel terrible when you get there. So really thinking about on a day-to-day basis, what am I doing today that feels good, that takes care of me, that, focuses on my priorities, and just being more thoughtful about not trying to achieve this end goal, but how does each day feel to you? It's a little less overwhelming than trying to constantly work towards some ideal that doesn't actually exist.
Right. And actually that is what you said on another webinar.
Glad to be consistent.
Just wanted to make that clear. But I'd like to go around the room basically on this topic, because we're all trapped in this, I don't know what this thing is, but Jen really spelled it out for us, is that, you know, if when you know you really cannot make that balance, that means you are making a decision, and you have to make a decision that you can live with. So Lauren, can you speak to that in terms of your life and your balance, and how you go about, you know, sort of balancing what that is?
Sure. I also agree that the term work-life balance is often used to women's detriment, and frankly, it's often used in the context of women's events, and men are very rarely asked about work-life balance. But I think it's important that we all strive to have fulfilling lives. I also noticed that you had said the word drowning before, and I work a lot on gender equity issues. And one of my mentors, Eve Rodsky, found in her research that even before the pandemic, the number one word that women used to describe how they were feeling was drowning. And I think a lot of women lawyers feel that in many different ways, whether or not they're parents, it doesn't matter. Like we've said, a lot of us on this call are very type A, we're high achievers. And I think we've all experienced this arrival fallacy of, okay, well, if I just achieve this one goal, I'll feel good. But does that really happen? You know, does the to-do list ever end? And I know that in my work with young women, with moms, the to-do list does not get shorter. It continues to get longer. And so I encourage my clients and myself to do a lot of what Angela and Jen said, which is take it day by day, take it in small steps. Yes, we all have professional goals, personal goals, practical tasks that we need to worry about. But you have to follow your intuition. You have to do what makes you feel good. And maybe that does mean turning off the phone at a certain time. Angela was describing, you know, taking it slow. And in therapy, we call that exposure therapy, right? You do it in a safe space with a supportive community, and you do it slowly so that you feel safe and you're still working towards your goals, but you're also really going back to your values of what feels good for yourself as a woman and a professional.
Thank you. And so seriously, Jamie, because of the fact that I know what you went through trying to be the superwoman badass, speak to that shortly on, you know, how you manage work and family.
I'm going to put in another plug for Eve Rodsky and her research. Angela actually turned me on to her book, Fair Play, and I can't recommend it highly enough. But for me, it was, I think there was another article in one of the ABA journals, maybe that described, particularly for women in the law, for lawyers generally, right? You know, it was co-authored by people of two different genders, that practicing as a professional, there are going to be periods where you are very busy, and there are going to be periods where you are not. There's going to be periods in your life where there's a lot going on in your family and your personal life, and there's going to be periods when there's not, and they're all in this state of flux. And so two things have helped me navigate through that, and I am by no means perfect in any way on this, but two things help me. One is this idea of kind of radical acceptance, this concept of it, where I recognize the things in my life that I cannot change, but I also then recognize that I have the power, the agency, the ability and the confidence to change other things around my life to make me okay with the thing that I can't change, and to put it in a context that makes it easier for me. So, you know, one of those things is scheduling. I am a litigator. I do it in administrative law, and I go to the Supreme Court sometimes. And with litigation, there, as we all know, there's periods, you know, leading up to a trial or a deposition or some big point where like you are all in all the time because you have to be. There's a time deadline on that, and you have to be prepared for it. And that's just part of the life. And I like the life of a litigator. And so one thing that I try to do to offset that, or to prepare for that, I don't want to use the word balance because it's not really, but it's to prepare for that, is to be able to say to the people in my life, my family members, I know I have trial next month in the middle of the month. The next 3 weeks are going to be very busy leading up to that trial. I'm going to be working more than I usually do. And you love me, you love my job. I love my job. I love what I do. And this is just the way that it's going to be, to give them time to prepare mentally for the fact that I'll be working through dinner or through bath time or through bedtime. And to give me the ability to say, all right, I now need to turn mindset on to level up. I'd say the harder part of my life to prepare for was actually the leveling down side, because we were trained as lawyers to like, and I think society at large is like, go, 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 go. You always have to be on. And so learning to say, all right, this is a down period. I don't have trial this month. I don't have a deposition this month. I don't have something big this month. I'm on top of my other projects and things for my clients. And you know what? It's okay for me to step back and say, no, I'm not going to sign on to work tonight. I'm going to sit and watch Severance. Speaking of the ultimate work-life balance, Severance. God, it's a terrifying, fantastic show. Watch it. Or it's okay for me to sleep a little bit longer in the morning, or spend some more time with my daughter and read with her, and that was the harder lesson for me to learn, to be able to say to myself, it's okay to ratchet down. And I don't have to be on all the time, because I'm going to take advantage of the downtime now, because I know the uptime is coming later. Those are things that have really helped me. It's not always easy to remind myself that this helps me, but it does.
It never is, because I think we all struggle with that too. It is currently 1:17, and I want to make sure that we have time for questions. Do we actually have any questions in the chat? Can somebody tell me that? We do not? Oh, good. I see something in the Q&A. I don't know if that was the question though, for us. Now,
it is.
okay.
I can read it out, Tasha, if that makes it easier.
Yeah.
The individual says, this has been a timely and meaningful conversation today. I recently accepted my post-grad job offer and am excited and nervous at what my life will look like surpassing billable hours. Do any of the women on the panel have advice as to what new women attorneys to create a healthy relationship with achievement in work and sustaining a healthy outside of work life without being viewed as not all in?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm going to throw this to Angela and then to Jennifer, because Angela, you're in a situation, you just had a child, you had your second child, and you have all this other stuff going on. You're an in-house counsel, you're a podcast host, you're a life coach. Can you give that person some idea as to how she's going to handle this moving forward, with at least some modicum of control over what she's doing with her life?
Yes, this is such a great question, and it's also very common. So I hope you know that you're not the only one feeling like this is such a struggle. And so I want to say that we will mess up. We will mess up, or at least we will feel like we are messing up, where we are missing certain things that we don't want to miss. We will feel like we are being judged in ways that we don't want to be judged. There will be days where we feel like Jennifer, not Jennifer, Lauren was saying, like we're drowning. And so I think it's like Jamie was saying, prepare in advance that actually that is something that we might be feeling. Prepare in advance, not just the calendar, but also those feelings that we will have of feeling inadequate, especially when we are at the beginning of our career. Isn't it so natural and so understandable that we feel like we know nothing about the law? I'm 5 years in, and I feel like every single day I know less. And so isn't it so natural and only reasonable that we feel like we are probably not catching up the way our perfectionism wants to catch up, right? One of my mentors, Serena Hicks, was talking about how anybody who says that they are recovered perfectionists is probably lying because a lot of us, we are still grappling with that because we want to be good. We want to serve others. We want to do the best that we can. And what if we kind of held that part of ourselves, held the part of ourselves that really wanted to do the best that we could. And if we notice ourselves being like, oh, like you didn't do good enough, like what if we held that part of ourselves too? And I would recommend that that is our first step in that journey.
Yeah. And Jennifer, I'd like you to share your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, so this is really tricky. And I'm going to be, I like live in a glass house and I'm throwing stones when I say this. So when we look to other people and other things to validate us and determine like whether or not we are successful, I think we're always going to be disappointed. It's really hard in the professional environment, right? Like I'm not in big law, but actually like kind of where I work, I'm doing a lot of that same stuff where, you know, there's tons of work to be done. You've got to do this, 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 and this. You have to have this many assets and this many clients and if you want to do this. And I'm on 3 boards and I feel like I can never say no because even though this isn't part of my work, you know, but it's like whether you get the promotion or you get this, like it's not probably going to be enough if you're only looking to your career as your only source of validation. Like you've got to have something else. It's different for everybody. Like for me, it's faith, right? Like other people, it might be something different, you know, and also Peloton, like I'll throw that out there, PLMs, Peloton Law Moms. But I think you're going to let people down. There's going to be somebody who doesn't appreciate what you do, no matter what you do. You're going to have the passive aggressive person where you are that's going to make you feel bad. You've got to just be like, okay, like take what they have to say. And the older you get, the better you are at like internally rolling your eyes and being like, you know, take it, you know, if it's good advice, like take the advice and do it. But not everything is like personal. Not everybody cares about you as much as you want to think they do. They might be having a bad day, but like you've got to, like when we talked about the work-life balance, like that doesn't really exist, but you've got to come up with the things that feed you and fuel you in a positive way. For me in the morning, like I try to have like my quiet time and like, you know, I'm in this like Rooted Sisters, like women, like Bible study thingy. And, you know, that's helpful for me. I do my like Peloton time. I have like my chat time with my other women professionals. And I've got like my family time and there's days I'm going to fail. And it's not usually the end of the world, right? Like it feels like that to us. So I think finding your value, figuring out what makes you feel valuable, and not having that be like that you got your billable hours and all that stuff is going to be the thing that like helps you get through that all, because you're going to have failures. You're going to have times you didn't get it. You're going to have people that are critical. That is coming no matter what you do. And just like the way you respond to it and you decide to like, I think I said this in the book, like let it make you better instead of bitter, you know, like the way you respond to all that is going to determine how quote unquote like successful you end up being, and what you decide to define success as. I know that was kind of like all over the place, but I had lots of thoughts about it. Could keep going on, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
Tasha, if I can jump in with one last thing, just on that point to answer the question that one thing law school certainly didn't teach me, working in government didn't teach me, and it didn't, quite frankly, my small firm didn't teach me, was like the daily day-to-day practice management of how to practice in my profession on a day-to-day basis, managing my inbox, managing my calendar, working with my admin, all those things. And I found it really helpful to learn from coaches. I know Jen talks about it a lot in her posts as well, and Angela as well, of just like how to do that. And that preparation part of my day made a really huge difference for me as well. So I would encourage that part of it on the law side for anyone who's learning to just take control of their own systems. And part of that is learning what systems work for you and what don't.
Right. I did notice that there might be a couple other questions. We probably have time for maybe one more question. Is there anything else in there, Jamie?
Yes, so we do have a question from one woman who is turning to law as a second career for herself after 25 years in HR with grown children. And she's really proud of herself for her choice to go to law school, which is something that she's wanted to do for a very long time. And I first, before we answer the question, like kudos for you. But anyway, her question is, do we have advice for her as an older woman attorney entering law as a new attorney, but as a second career?
Who wants to jump in on that one?
I'll start just quickly. Have fun with it. There's obviously a reason that this has been a goal of yours, and I encourage you to do what makes you happy, which again, I think is a theme that many of us are raising today. Enjoy it. It will not always be fun, easy. People may not always be kind, but stick with your values and remember why it was so important to you, because it wasn't easy to do what you did, which is to take the LSAT, to apply, etc. So remember that your life experience does lend itself to the role that you are in now, and try to enjoy it as much as possible.
And I think, Jen, did you want to say something to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm not really sure if there's particular advice you're looking for, but in my experience, so I went straight through from law school, from undergrad to law school. And in my experience, people who have taken time off and done a different career, no matter what that career is, are so much better prepared to be lawyers. Like, your past experience is going to serve you really well. And so if you've got doubts around that, just to go back and remind yourself that you've already had one successful career, and everything you learned there can be translated here. You've already set yourself up for success for this.
Yeah, that's sort of where I would go with this too, because I didn't go straight from undergrad to law school. I had somewhat of a career in accounting. I'm glad I took the leap, because accounting, sorry for all accountants out there, but it's boring. Sorry, I'm not going to do it anymore. So
I'm going to take minor offense, Tasha, with my tax law over here. Tax law is cool.
Well, you make it sound cool, I can tell you that. But really, it's once you've made that leap, I think because of your experience and what you've already been through, and you've been in the world and you know what's happening out there, you're going to take this a lot differently than some newbie who's straight out of college and jumping straight into law school and then having to jump right into a law firm. So breathe. That's what I have to say. Breathe, let it sink in, but definitely breathe, because the anguish is going to be there because it's new, but you got this. You got this. So that's my 2 cents. Okay. I don't think we have enough time for anything else. It's 28 after the hour. And I wanted to just quickly finish up with the fact that we all mentioned something about community and how important community is. And I think I want to say Jamie and Lauren and Jennifer, you all mentioned this. Jen probably mentioned it too. And Angela has built her own community through LinkedIn. If you're not already on LinkedIn, then get on LinkedIn. There are plenty of great women, men, everyone on there will be there to support you. And so my 2 cents for you, if you aren't already there, it's a great way to build your, not just your community, but to build your career overall, because we're networking as well. We're not just building a community, but we're also networking. So if you haven't done that, please get on there. Don't be afraid. Post something, do something, respond to someone's post, get on there and get active. I encourage you to do that. Moving forward, we are going to wrap up at this point. I think first of all, we all hope that you were entertained by this, and I hope you were. We are certainly open to doing this again if we need to, because we're actually having fun at this as well. But in the meantime, I thank you all for joining us, and please go out and buy the book if you haven't already. 23 great stories, and you will find something that resonates with you in that book. I guarantee it. Thank you so much.